Good.
Okay. Thank you, Dov. So good morning, everybody. Page 198, Parshas Vayeshev. We're actually going to double back a little bit. And last week we discussed how we went through a whole series of Parshiot. And we saw how the efforts that were made by Rachel, and then by Leah, for the good, how that reverberated throughout time and throughout the Parshiot. The same thing applies also for missteps that are made. And we discussed how Yaakov, when he came to get the brachot from his father, from Yitzchak, from Isaac, so he came there and he deceived him with these gedi'izim, with the goats that had been prepared. And we saw how this kept coming back at him to a certain degree. And we're going to see how it goes almost generation to generation. We saw that he had to leave, had to run, because he received these brachot. He ran from Esav. And he came to the house of Lavan. He came to the house of Lavan penniless. We discussed this before, that he was crying when he met Rachel. Why was he crying when he met Rachel? So Rashi explains two things. First of all, he realized, he saw prophetically that they would not be buried together. So he saw that this relationship would not have the eternity that he hoped it would. And also because he came penniless, whereas his father's suitor, right, when Eliezer, the servant of Avram, came to marry a wife for his father, Yitzchak, to marry Rivka, he was laden with these camels filled with goods, and he was penniless. Why was he penniless? So we mentioned because Eliphaz, the son of Esav, had come and taken had taken everything from him. And there was a reason behind it. But the son of Esav had taken away all of his things. So he's crying almost over the same thing. He's crying over the strife that's going to be resulting from what happened with the brachot. Meaning, because he's coming penniless, so what arrangement needs to be made with Lavan? I'll work for 7 years, as opposed to pulling up there in his Mercedes with his camels laden and saying, "Hi, I am the son of Isaac. We're the same family. I'd like to marry your daughter Rachel." And they work it out, and he gets married. Instead of that happening, what happens? He arrives there penniless, ends up working for 7 years, and then being married to Leah instead of Rachel. So because of what happened with the sale that led to him being penniless, that led to him not being buried with Rachel, being buried with Leah in Marat HaMachpelah, and again we see, how does it come back to bite him? What does Lavan say to him when Yaakov complains and says, "I worked for Rachel, I worked for Rachel. Why did you give me Leah as a wife?" What was his response? In our place, we don't do the younger before the older. Right? What is the emphasis? In our place, we don't do the younger before the older. I know in the barn that you grew up in, that might be how it's done, but not by us. Right? You propelled yourself. You went ahead. According to the Medrash, the Bali Tosa would bring this back earlier, when Yaakov said something about it to Leah, her response was, "Guess who I learned from?" Right? The father asked for Esav and got Yaakov. You asked for Rachel and you got Leah. So it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back at Yaakov. Okay. Now he has his children. All the children are born. Our Parsha begins, page 198. Someone lead off for us in Hebrew.
Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan ele toldos Yaakov Yosef ben sheva esrei shana haya ro'eh et echav be'batzon v'hu nar et b'nei Bilo ve'et b'nei Zilpa neshei aviv vayavei Yosef es dibatam ra'a el avitam.
Let's take one more.
Yisroel ahab et Yosef mikol banov ki ben zukinim hu lo v'solo.
Okay, so these first three psukim have so much in here. We seem to be all over the place, but really we're all in one place here. Let someone take it for us in English, please.
Jacob settled in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the chronicles of Jacob. Joseph, at the age of 17 years, was a shepherd with his brothers by the flock. But he was a youth with sons. He was a youth with sons of Bila and sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph would bring evil reports about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, since he was a child of his old age. And he made him a fine woolen tunic.
Okay. So first of all, Jacob settled in the lands of his father's sojournings. Actually, in the newsletter that's going to go out probably today, I discussed that a little bit. The sages say that Jacob wanted to sit tranquilly, and then look what happens. The whole Joseph episode comes at him. And the idea being that the Pasuk says, Vayeshev Yaakov. It's different terms. Yaakov settled in the land of his father's sojournings. Yaakov was ready for leisure world. That's what happened over here. Right? He wanted to sit b'shalva. And Hashem's answer was, this world is not the place for that. Right? And the whole episode of Yosef comes at him. Now, these are the chronicles of Jacob. Joseph, at the age of 17 years, was a shepherd. The English says was a shepherd with his brothers by the flock. Let's look at the Hebrew. Haya ro'eh et echav batzon. Right? It doesn't say that he was shepherding with his brothers. It's almost saying he was shepherding et echav, his brothers. He was shepherding his brothers batzon, right? With the flock. What does it mean, shepherding his brothers with the flock?
Bossing them around.
No,
Right.
seeing them.
Right. The pretense might have been the flock. But what was he actually doing? He was overseeing the brothers.
But he's younger.
V'hu na'ar. And he was a na'ar. He was a youth. Et b'nei Bila ve'et b'nei Zilpa neshei aviv. Oh. Right? Also awkward. But he was a na'ar. He was a child who was sort of being with, Ragil Eitzel, Rashi says, commonly with the children of Bila and the children of Zilpa, the wives of his father. Now we know who Bila and Zilpa were, right? Why are we saying that the wives of his father? And Yosef would bring dibatam ra'ah, bad reports to his father. Bad reports of who? Of those that he was shepherding, the brothers. So once again, we see the strife that began with the discord, the lack of unity that began with the brachos, with Yaakov and Esav, which then led to Yaakov having to work for love and being there penniless, and all the strife that was involved in the marriages to Rachel and Leah and Bila and Zilpah. And now we see how this strife is just going further and further. This discord, this disunity goes further and further. That you have Yosef, the chosen son of the chosen wife, Rachel, overseeing the brothers. Who is he hanging out mostly with? The sons of the maidservants. Because of this discord, because of this disunity. and anything that he sees wrong about his brothers, or that he perceives it as being wrong about the brothers, what does he do? He quickly goes and tells that to the father. More and more discord over here. And Yisroel loved Yosef. He was the Ben Zekunim Hulo. He was the child of his old age. Rashi brings a number of explanations of this Ben Zekunim. Right? He was born to him in his old age. He was particularly smart. Right? He taught him all that he had learned. He was able to teach it over to Yosef. Their appearance was the same. He had a favoritism towards Yosef, and he exhibited that favoritism. Right? That's the classic. Right? You don't want to exhibit the favoritism. Right? Might parents have a favorite child? Heaven forbid, they'll swear. Right? Not that we have a favorite child, but I think as parents we do recognize certain strengths and weaknesses in each of the children. And it could very well be that, there are some that we get along very easily with, and some that, we have our personality. Each of our children have their personalities. Sometimes it's an easy ride. Other times it's a rocky road. And thankfully, where Natalie had a rocky road, I was able to go smoothly. And where I had a rocky road, Natalie was able to go smoothly. So Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. But whatever the case is, you cannot show. And here, Yaakov, for whatever reason, did show the favoritism, and the strife is getting worse and worse and worse.
He loved Rachel more, and here it's
that's what I'm saying. Right, this was the son of the favorite wife. Right, this is it keeps going, and it's going to continue generationally. Yeah.
I once heard this on the radio about your favorite child. And so they said you should test your children and ask which one they think is the favorite. And so I did. I asked all 4 of my kids, who do you think is our favorite child? And it's interesting because they all didn't know, but they all thought it definitely wasn't them. It's definitely not me.
But
that was their answer.
Okay.
All of them. All 4 of them.
Wow.
I would never even attempt to ask that question in my house.
Okay.
I would never ask that question.
I was just, it was whatever. I heard it on the radio
Interesting.
and I asked them, I said, who do you think?
Do you have a favorite?
No. And then I asked them, I said, who's your favorite, mom or dad?
Oh.
And then you see you can't answer that one either. I said, well, that's the same. That's
Which day and what time?
yeah, exactly.
And what they want.
Allowance day. No,
But it's interesting that from their perspective, so even from Joseph's, it might have been or whatever, or he gave whatever, and on the day when you give something to one kid or you tell one kid something or they hear something, then they, in their perception,
Yeah.
So, and even what's on your perception is not what's necessarily in their perception.
That's
So here it was clear that he was a favorite.
That's the point.
I grew up in a merged family. My mother passed away. My father remarried a wonderful woman whose husband had passed away, and so we had 5 children. But I was from the younger group. I was the youngest, and the older ones were mostly out of the house. It was really just. It was mostly the 4 younger, myself and my sister, Allah Shalom, and my brother and sister from my stepmother. And it was very interesting because very often each of our parents would go out of the way to show that they were not showing any favoritism. Right? And one time we sort of sat them down. Right? The kids sat the parents down and said, "Look, let's just relax about this whole thing." And we understand that, if one of you has been bringing up this child since infancy, and the other ones have entered the scene at age, whatever it was, 8, 9, 10, 11, we understand that there's going to be some differences in feelings. And we just want to let you know that you haven't shown that.
Oh, wow.
You don't exhibit it, and it doesn't manifest itself in any tangible way. And we're comfortable with that. So if we're comfortable with that, you can relax a little bit.
And were you the instigator of that family meeting?
I don't
just
think
have
so.
a feeling.
I don't think so.
Maybe you thought
I don't
that.
think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. But you know, but here he showed the favoritism, and what's that going to lead to? Okay, then Yosef has his dreams, and he shares these dreams with his brothers, and that just adds to the animosity.
Why Joseph behaved the way he did?
Why did Joseph behave the way he did? With Yosef, well, there are a couple of different approaches. And I don't think they're necessarily contradictory to one another. According to Ramban, these dreams that Yosef had, he knew that these were prophecies. Prophecies that he would need to bring about the realization of these prophecies. According to Ramban, very interesting, we'll see later on, when the brothers come down, he busts their chops, right? He makes it so hard and insists that Binyamin come down. Why is that? Because he wanted to bring about the fulfillment of the first dream before the second dream. We're not going to go through the dreams now, because we'll end up getting very stuck there. The first dream was the sheaves of wheat bowing down to him. Second one was the 11 stars and the sun and the moon. The difference being the first dream was all the brothers. The second dream was the brothers and the mother and the father. So Yosef understood that he needed to bring about the fulfillment of the first dream before he could say, I'm Yosef, in which case his father's going to come down. And the second dream will be fulfilled. He first needs to bring about the fulfillment of the first dream, which is get Binyamin down there without revealing his identity. Okay. Now, there are those that explain that Yosef wanted them to realize this is not my own self-aggrandizement. This is not my own self-promotion. This is from the heavens. This is the role that was granted to me. When I see a Kohen, do I say, oh, how come he's a Kohen? How come he gets to do the Birchat Kohanim? And I just stand there with my talis over my head. How come he gets the first Aliyah? How come whenever I bench, if he's I have to say Birshut HaKohen with the permission of the Kohen? Do I feel that way? I don't feel that way. Because that's his role. He was born a Kohen. That's his role. All the power to him. I've got my role. I've got my hands full with my role. Let me try to do my role as best as I can. I'm not jealous of his role. I understand that that's not mine. What Yosef, some say, was trying to let the brothers know is this is not me self-promoting. These are the dreams that I had. This is prophecy. This is the role that I'm meant to play. But they didn't take it that way, right? And we keep saying Yosef was a na'ar, right? Which connotes there was a lad. There was a certain immaturity, right? There's a certain, there's a lot of talk about emotional maturity, right? What's a person's emotional maturity level? How do they know or not know how to deal with situations, right? Thinking that his telling the brothers about the dreams is going to result in them saying, oh, then it's okay. Oh, you're right. Okay, you're the leader. Right? I think we would call that, in today's terms, it was a failing in the emotional maturity and understanding how is this going to play out. Right? And the way it played out is certainly going to be really bad, because what happens is they're going to then go ahead and sell Yosef, which we have in the 6th Parsha in page 202.
Did it happen before Shem?
Before
Shem?
Shechem? The thing with Dinah happened already.
Yes.
Dinah happened already. Yes. Okay? Now, again, without getting too bogged down in the sale of Yosef, right? But what does that mean that the brothers sold Yosef? You know, there's sibling rivalry, but there's never sibling rivalry to the point of thinking of killing, throwing into a pit, right? Selling. Even though from the psukim it's not so clear exactly who did the actual sale. Right? We've gone through that before, but nevertheless, they played a very, very bitter role in this. And these are tzaddikim. These are the righteous of the righteous. So
How can you call them righteous after they killed every male? They're vicious, they're the criminals.
Shimon and Levi, okay, well, that's a whole other topic. Shimon and Levi, so the commentators explain how could they have done that, and was it justified? Was it not justified?
Shem?
Yeah. Okay. And the justification, I believe Rambam and also Ramban, the justification that's given is that in order to extricate their sister Dinah, who was being held there, right? Certainly Shechem, the perpetrator, was deserving of death for violating Dinah. The townspeople who would have all stood in the way and defended their leader are no longer civilians, right? If they're bearing arms to protect the perpetrator, right?
That's not exactly whatever happened there. Actually, is questionable. Nobody knows. But they came to ask for marriage. They agreed to circumcision. So the peace process was on the way, and during that they killed.
Okay, so the way most of the commentators explain is that let's go with Ramban. Jacob seemed to be. Let's spend a little time on that, and then we'll come back to where we are. Jacob seemed to agree with the idea of the circumcision. There's no way Jacob was going to agree with the marriage. The circumcision.
He already agreed with the under the condition of circumcision.
The circumcision was a plan, was a ploy to weaken them, and then be able to get in there and take out Dinah. Dinah being taken and raped. This was not, as long as everyone circumcises, then we'll have a nice wedding. Right? What color do you want to have? Who's ordering the flowers? Photographer? That's not how it's going to work. Right? They don't grab Dinah, rape her, and then keep her. So they were going to be rescuing Dinah. Jacob's plan was let them all circumcise, they're all weakened, and then we can get in there and rescue Dinah. Shimon and Levi took it to a whole other level. Shimon and Levi, once they were weakened, went in there and wiped them out.
After all of it, Levi is honored with the Levite status.
Yes, that is correct, right? Even though Jacob curses their anger at the very end when he's giving the blessings before his death, he curses their anger.
But not the
okay?
action.
I'm sorry?
But not the action.
The action.
Well,
Yes or no?
so it's very. If you want to just take a look, okay, let's take a quick look. It is left very, very ambiguous over here. Take a look on page 185. Well, let's go to 183. The deception, verse 13 there. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor cleverly, and they spoke because he had defiled their sister Dinah. Meaning, they were speaking here with cleverness, with guile, right? The plan was never that they would circumcise and then marry, right? The plan was, though, that they would circumcise and then rescue Dinah. 185, then what happened? Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, Each took his sword, came upon the city, conquered and killed every male. Verse 25, right? Interesting. Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers. Do we know who they are? Do we know who they were before this?
Yeah.
We knew they were the brothers of Dinah?
Yeah.
We knew that. We know that. So why is it saying Dinah's brothers over here? Why is it saying Dinah's brothers? What's it telling us?
To emphasize that they were angry because they're her brothers.
And they're acting as brothers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Each took his sword, and they killed every male. Okay? And then they took Dinah from Shechem and the house and left. Now, Jacob, verse 30. Jacob said to Shimon and Levi, you have discomposed me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites, among the Perizzites. I am few in number. Should they band together and attack me, I'll be annihilated, I and my household. And they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? What does Jacob answer to that?
Nothing.
You don't hear a thing. So it's almost like the Torah is saying,
Bottom line.
the verdict is still out. They made a point. He has a point of being annihilated. They had a point, right? It's not clear. It's not clear at all. Halachically, was there justification in doing this? So the two justifications that are brought are either that of the 7 Noahide mitzvot, one of them is that they set up a proper court system. Here they clearly did not have a proper court system if this girl was able to be taken, raped, and then held on to over there, right? So therefore, that's one. They have not been fulfilling their mitzvot. Secondly, in order to rescue Dinah, as I said before, they're all going to stand in his way. Okay? But coming back to where we are now, on page 202. So the sale of Yosef, again, is a very, very difficult parsha, difficult story to wrap our heads around. Sforno gives an explanation as follows. Sforno explains, again, I don't want to get too stuck on this. Sforno explains there's a concept called a rodef. A rodef is if someone is running after you to kill you, you are allowed to kill that person in order to rescue yourself. Anyone else who witnesses that can kill that person in order to save the nirdaf, the person who's being pursued. Okay. The brothers, Sforno says, looked at it in the following way. They said, there seems to be a recurring theme in our family. Abraham, Avram had 2 sons, Yitzchak and Yishmael. What happened over there? The older one was rejected, pushed out. He's not part of the lineage of the loosely called Jewish people. He's not part of that lineage of Abraham. He's pushed out. And who assumed the mantle of Abraham? Yitzchak, Isaac. Okay. Yitzchak had 2 sons, Esav and Yaakov. What happened? The older one, Esav, is marginalized. He's pushed off. And the lineage follows through the younger one, through Jacob. Now we have Jacob. And Jacob has 12 sons. What's happening?
Is Benjamin born already?
Yeah. What's happening?
Don't worry.
What's happening is, he wasn't there to say. What's happening is that the youngest one is once again trying wrongly to delegitimize us and push us out and claim the mantle. Now, the Gemara says, and this will be a little hard to wrap our heads around a little bit, but the Gemara says, and let's view it from a pure Torah perspective, the Gemara says, if you cause someone to sin, that is worse than killing the person. Because killing a person takes away their temporary life. If you're leading a person into a life of sin, that's going to take away their eternal life. They viewed Joseph, as a spiritual rodef, a spiritual pursuant, who was trying to get Jacob, their father, to curse them and to reject them and to push them out from the whole lineage of Bnei Yisrael. And therefore, they, actually says that they sat as a Beit Din, they sat as a court, and they ruled that this is what Joseph was deserving. That is how Sephorno explains. However we're going to slice it, we are at a point of incredible strife and discord. Now, after they have done that, they need to do something with the father. What are they going to do with the father? Let's turn to page 206. Amy, do you have a question before you hand up or no?
No.
Let's go to page 206, 207. Reuven is the one, he's the oldest, he's the one who feels he'll bear the responsibility. Reuven actually planned to rescue Yosef. His plan, as the Pasuk said, if you want to see it back over here, on page 205, let's go back. And Reuven, the very top, 22, Reuven said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him." Parenthetically, intending to rescue him from their hand, to return him to his father. Okay, that was Reuven's plan. Reuven is almost the failed leader when it comes to the tribes. Reuven was the oldest. But when it came to kingdom royalty, it's not from Reuven. It's from the fourth brother. It's from Judah, Yehuda. When it comes to kahuna, right, it's the tribe of Levi. The one who will be the Kohen, the priesthood. Reuven here, instead of being the big brother and seizing the leadership over here, he looked for a roundabout way of taking care of it, right? Just throw him in the pit. And then he's planning on coming back and rescue him. And so it was when Joseph came to his brothers, stripped him of his tunic, the fine wool and tunic that was on him. They took him and cast him into the pit. He was emptying the water in it. They sat to eat food, raised their eyes, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilad, camels bearing spices, balsam, lotus, and on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What gain will there be if we kill our brother, cover his blood? Let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let our hand not be upon him. He is our brother, our own flesh." The brothers agreed. 28, Midianite men, traders, passed by. They drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver that they brought to Egypt. So this pasuk, just quickly, is very, very ambiguous. Midianite men, traders, passed. They drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit. Who's they?
Yeah, we don't know who.
Midianite.
From the simple reading, it seems it's the Midianites.
Oh.
Midianites, men, traders, passed. They drew Joseph, or could mean the brothers, right? Who planned it originally, and then they is going back on them.
It's brothers because they sold him.
Hmm?
It's brothers, not Midianites, because
Because
they
they sold
drew.
Who's they?
Brothers.
How do you know?
Because they sold him.
How do you know that?
It says here, and sold Joseph.
Very good. So maybe the Midianites sold him.
It's Midianite men passed by.
What I'm saying is from the Psukim, it's ambiguous, and Rashbam learns actually it was not the brothers that sold Joseph, it was the Midianite men, which really is a tight reading of the Psukim. Not to exonerate them, but they didn't do the actual sale. Either way, Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, his plan went awry. His plan to rescue Joseph went awry. Joseph was not in the pit, so he rent his garments. Returning to his brothers, he said, "The boy is gone, and where can I go?" What did they do? Vayikhu et ktonet Yosef. They took the ktonet of Yosef. They slaughtered a goat and dipped the tunic in the blood. They sent it to their father. And they said to the father, "Hakerna, recognize please, Hakatonet binchehi imlo. Is this the tunic of your son or not? He recognized it, and he said, my son's tunic. Chaya ra'a achalatu, a wild beast has devoured him. Tarof toraf Yosef. Yosef has been torn. Okay? So what just happened over here? Next generation, what do we have? We have Yehuda and the brothers deceiving Yaakov. Deceiving Yaakov with what?
The same thing.
With a very cruel deceit.
Yeah, but
How righteous.
With the goat,
With the
same
goats.
with the skin.
with the goats.
With what?
Goats. So what do we have? We have
Everything is
Yaakov deceiving his father by bringing him those goats. And here we have the brothers deceiving Yaakov with the goats.
Excuse my ignorance, but a ram, is that a goat? I don't know.
No, where do you see ram?
No, because I'm thinking of
Akedah.
Akedah.
No, no.
So what is a ram compared to a goat?
It's a different animal.
It's a ram is like this.
One's a sheep.
Different kind
It's a Chevy.
Think shofar horns. Think shofar horns.
Okay.
Right?
Thanks.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I was thinking about it.
Okay? See, here the brothers, right, are now deceiving their father. Okay? Let's go to the next Parsha, which we'll spend a little bit of time on now. Page 208, 209.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if it's a feel, but I kind of can't resist. Is it a sign of Yaakov's Mida of MS that everything happens to him Mida Keneged Mida, deception he's involved in,
It's an interesting
deception
thought.
comes to him,
That's
goats
inter-
he makes trouble with, goats come back to him.
That's an interesting thought.
And that in a way that's
MS is
like
true.
kind of a sign
That's interesting.
that he himself embodies MS so much
I
that
hear that.
Bless you.
Right?
Bless
There's a certain
justice.
constant yeah.
Can you-
Everything needs to be accounted for. Nothing,
The ledger's always even with him.
Yeah. You don't just throw something and there's always a rebound. That's an interesting look on MS, right? MS being a balancing that always takes place. Debbie?
I was going to say that in every one of these incidents that occur connected to Yaakov, the Torah could have covered it over, but it didn't. Again, the truth is here with Shem. It's not always a pleasant truth. It's not always a truth that we're comfortable with necessarily. It's not always a truth that we can rationally explain necessarily, but it's a truth, and the Torah doesn't hide it. So everything that happens here, it could have been glossed over, it could have been hidden, it could have been covered over, and made us all look so, but it isn't. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, and that's one of the.
But the exact justice of it is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, so Debbie's making a very good point in terms of in general we see the validity of Torah that we don't deify anybody, right? Their mistakes are out there, right? And Heidi is saying the idea of the MS, just that there is this constant the balance goes. So now what happened?
I still find
Yeah.
the punishment is not equal to the crime that's committed. What they committed in Shem, it's much worse. It's horrible, and they're still than what other people did, for which they were punished much more severely. A lot of examples.
Okay, so the couple of things I have to keep in mind. First of all, I disagree to a degree about how terrible it was what happened in Shem. Okay, but we can disagree about that. But we don't. I'm not saying that this was Yaakov's punishment, that they deceived him. Right? It was the evening of the evening of the score That's something that Hashem takes care of in this world and next world, right? We can't look at the Torah and say, oh, every score got settled, right? We have Cain and Abel, Cain and Hevel. Hevel's a good guy, he gets killed, right? Cain kills him, and then whatever happens to Cain, we see a very incomplete picture.
Right.
The point that I'm making, that we see over here, is that the seeds that are planted keep sprouting, right? And I think that's a very potent lesson for us, that the seeds that we plant, it goes around, comes around, as I say.
Still ties in with what we said last week. I'm saying.
Right.
You don't always see it.
Right. And that's what I started off saying. By Rachel and Leah, we saw that they're good acts planted, and look how things unfolded. And here we're seeing where there was strife, where there was mirma.
But there was a purpose.
Right? Yeah. But then, and now what happens over here? Now Yehuda leaves the brothers. Why does Yehuda leave the brothers? So, what's the connection between the sale and it was that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned away towards an Adulamite man whose name was Chira, saw the daughter of a prominent merchant whose name was Shua. He married her, consorted with her. Right? What's happening with Yehuda over here? The brothers are all upset with Yehuda. Why are they all upset with Yehuda? Because you were the leader. When you said, let's not kill him and throw him in the pit, we all agreed. You carried the day. Had you said, bring him back to his father, we also would have agreed. And look, right, Yaakov, we didn't see that, but Yaakov was inconsolable. Right? Back on 207, sons to comfort him, refused to comfort. I will go down to the grave mourning my son. His father bewailed him. Right? Yaakov was inconsolable. They saw the pain of Yaakov and they said, this was not what we should have done. Right? And they looked and they blamed, to a certain degree, they blamed Judah. You carried the day. What you said to do is what we did. Right? Why didn't you use your leadership to bring him back? He leaves. He gets married. Right? He gets married. Right? And he has 3 sons. And then he takes a wife for his firstborn son in verse 6. Her name was Tamar. Was evil, died. Judah said to Onan, right, enter into a levirate marriage with her. Onan knew the seed would not be his, so therefore he would let the seed go to waste, so there not be any offspring. He also died.
Why he knew the offspring is not going to be his?
Okay, so levirate marriage is a concept of the Torah. Levirate marriage means, or I should say manifests itself, if a person dies leaving a wife without any children, then that is considered that this person is cut off. There's no progeny that he's going to leaving. Therefore, the ultimate chesed is, the ultimate act of gracious kindness is that she marries the brother. And the child, the first child that is born from this union, is considered the spiritual progeny of the deceased brother. That is Yibum. Nowadays, we do and we don't have Yibum. Meaning, in a situation where a husband died, leaving a wife and no children, and he has paternal brothers, so then, according to the Torah, either Yibum is done, which is the marriage, or Chalitza is done, which is the severing of the link between the brother and the widow. And that then, once Chalitza is done, the widow is then free, able to marry anyone. The Gemara says that if a person is going to do now, normally you can't marry a sister-in-law. This is one of the If the husband died leaving a wife with children, then it's absolutely prohibited. It's incest for the person to marry his sister-in-law, right? To marry the wife of his late brother. So this is a very strange situation. With no children, there's a mitzvah of yibum. With children, it's considered incest. So the Gemara, we learn that if a person's going to marry that wife, that widowed woman, not for the mitzvah, but because, hey, she's a great girl, she's a wonderful woman, right? Then it's like incest. Now, in our world, the only time we'd say to marry her is, well, the two of you get along? You like her? Okay? You know, you've known each other for decades. Could very well be. Right? So, right? The only way that a marriage could work nowadays is if they like each other. They want to get married. And that, right? So therefore, nowadays we always do chalitza. In those situations, chalitza is done and then the woman is free to get married, but not, of course, to any of the brothers. So that was what was meant to happen over here, but he knew the child would not be his because of this. The children would be the spiritual progeny of the late brother. So what does Yehuda tell her to do? He tells her, listen, go away. My son, my third son, Shelah, is young. When he gets older, then you can marry him. I don't want him to make the same mistakes. Shelah gets older, and she is not summoned. The commentators have two different looks on this. One approach is he never intended to marry her to Shelah, to the third son. Okay? He never intended to do that. Because she married two of the sons, they both died. He's not marrying her. He's not going to have a third son marry her. He was just pushing her away. According to others, he was planning on having her marry Shelah once he would get older. Not just old enough to get married, but mature enough not to make the same mistake. Okay? That's another approach. Rashi and Ramban have these two approaches. At the point that Shelah is old enough to get married, but not mature enough to assume it, right? So Tamar looks at this and says, hey, he's not planning on having me marry Shelah. Okay? Either she was correct or it was still premature. She wanted to be part of this family of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the descendants. The concept of Yibum can be fulfilled by anyone marrying this widowed woman. Once the Torah is given, it is limited to a paternal brother. But the concept of Yibum, Ramban says, that can take place with anyone marrying this woman. She says, well, Shelah, I will not be able to marry Shelah. I want to have offspring from Judah. And what does she do? She goes and waits by the road. She dresses herself up. She is unrecognizable as Tamar, right? And Yehuda saw her, page 211. He thought her to be a harlot, verse 15, since she had covered her face. Right? Let me consort with you. He did not know that this was Tamar. Woe you give me if you consort with me. I will send you a kid of the goats from the flock. Provided you leave a pledge. What pledge shall I give you? Your signet, your wrap, right, your cloak, and your staff. He gave them, consorted with her, she conceived by him. She left. Judah sent the goats to retrieve the pledge, but he did not find her. What just happened over here?
He got deceased.
He got deceived
Goats.
with goats.
Well, there you go.
Okay? We have Jacob deceiving Isaac. We have Judah in the lead, but the brothers deceiving Jacob. We have Tamar deceiving Judah. Right? What ends up happening? By 2:13, it was when about 3 months had passed that Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar has committed harlotry. She has conceived by harlotry. She's supposed to be waiting for Shelah, and lo and behold, she's pregnant. Judah has no idea that it's from him. Take her out. Let her be burned. She was taken out. She sent word saying, by the man to whom these belong, I am with child. Who's the father? Whoever these belong to. Identify, please. Who is this? To whom belongs this ring, this cloak, and the staff? Judah recognized, and he said, she is right. It is from me. Inasmuch as I did not give her to Shelah my son, and he was not intimate with her anymore. From this union there were twins. Who was born? Peretz and Zerach. Right? Which is from the lineage from which comes the kingdom of David and the Mashiach. But right here we had a little bit of a turn. We had deception, but now Yehuda takes a turn. He's there in the Beit Din, right? Imagine the rabbi is there in the Beit Din, and they're judging on the promiscuity of one of the women in the community.
No, his daughter-in-law.
His daughter-in-law, right? That's who they're judging. And she does not say who did it. She says, whoever this belongs to. And the rabbi stands up and says, oh, case closed, case dismissed. But why, Rabbi? I'm the one who made her pregnant. Oh, wonderful, Rabbi. Everything's great now. Right? And we'll start sending your resume immediately. Right? Right? The strength. Now, in retrospect, it was not a sin. In retrospect, it was yibum. It was levirate marriage. It was not a sin. But the absolute humiliation and degradation for Judah, for Yehuda to stand up.
Truth.
Yeah, the truth. Right? Actually, one of the commentators say, we're called Jews. Judaism. Where does that come from? Judah. Why did he merit that the whole Jewish nation is called by Judah? Because of his honesty. And the trademark of a Jew is meant to be this honesty.
It's not from Modim?
Huh?
It's not from Modim? We're not Yehudim from Modim?
That's
we're
I think the Kliyaka or the Or Chaim, one of them says it over here.
What is modem?
Modem is thanks.
We give thanks.
And also admitting.
We're grateful.
Right? So, at this point, Judah is acknowledging, he is turning things around. And it continues to turn around. Joseph is brought down to Egypt, right? And then he's in the house of Potiphar. And then he's thrown in prison because of accusation. And then he interprets the dreams. And then in Parsha Miketz, Paro has his dreams. And Joseph comes out of prison. And Joseph interprets those dreams. And then what happens? The brothers, the dreams are about the famine, the plenty years and the famine years. And the famine years, the brothers come down. Joseph accuses them of being spies. Well, why? We'll see. We explain a little bit. We'll see more when we get to that. Right? And then finally, Benjamin comes down. And then the goblet is placed in the cup, in the bag of Benjamin. And now Benjamin is going to be taken as a slave. So what happens now? We have just recreated, Joseph has just recreated his sale into slavery. He's just recreated that whole scenario now with Rachel's other son, with Benjamin. Let's see how the brothers are going to react. Let's see where they're really at. So he recreates, he orchestrates and recreates the same sale into slavery, but it's even easier this time. Instead of them having to sell Benjamin into slavery, Benjamin is going to be taken into slavery. All they need to say is, why'd you take the goblet? Terrible. Okay, I'll have to tell your father what you did, and you're in slavery. Who steps forward the week after that? Judah. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Judah steps forward. Right? Judah steps forward. So we're at the bottom, and then we turn. And then we turn. Now, when is the epitome of our unity, of our all being one? When have we come together as a nation? Right? Well, going forward, Yitziat Mitzrayim. Right? Right? The Exodus from Egypt. What signifies the Exodus from Egypt? The Korban Pesach. The Paschal sacrifice. Right? And that's got to be roasted in its entirety. It needs to be together. Right? You can't break it apart. It's all in its entirety. And what is that Paschal sacrifice? Or? Not a ram. No, yeah, not a ram. Right? Right? And that's what, right? When we bring a korban tzibur, we bring a korban tamid, a daily sacrifice. That's for the entire nation. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. What is that? It's a sheep or it is a gedi. Okay? The goat, the kid.
What's the difference?
Right? Different animals. Either one can be brought. Right? But it's just fascinating how we see there was the deception, and the seeds that you plant. Right? What that leads to, and it leads to, and it leads to, how it reverberates, but it can be turned around. It can be turned around. And all of the discord, all of this disunity, all of the disharmony, that was turned around with the honesty and the Vayigash, and with Judah doing anything and everything. Keep me as a slave. Let the son of Rachel go back. That was the coming back. And ultimately, the kingdom of Judah was actually, when Israel did split apart again, the kingdom of Judah was, which 2 tribes? There were the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. Who were the 2 tribes? Judah and Benjamin.
Wow.
What do you mean?
Judah, the 2 tribes, when the kingdom split, right, and there was now the kingdom of Judah comprised of 2 tribes, and the kingdom of Israel comprised of 10 tribes. The kingdom of Judah, which 2 tribes was it? Judah and Benjamin. And Benjamin.
And Joseph's?
Not. Right? But he was part of the 10, his sons are part of the 10 tribes. Okay? But you have this unity of those, the son of Rachel and the son of Leah. And ultimately we speak about that coming together of those 2. That unity, the ultimate unity, will be the ultimate geula, the ultimate redemption.
So going back to last week with Esau, is that going to be a unity between Jacob and Esau?
Is there going to be a unity between Jacob and Esau?
Because he said, I can't go now. I'll come later.
Lahar Seir. Yeah. Ultimately, what will the messianic times look like? So some opinions say it's going to be a whole different world. Others say it's going to be the same exact world, except for Shibud Malchiyut, which is that instead of us being under the domain of the other kingdoms, the entire world will recognize Hashem. So I imagine at that point, including Esav, including Edom, it will be all that unity. That's what Jacob has said to him. I'll meet you in Har Seir. I'll meet you in Seir, he said to him, right? Right? Is that what he said? What was the words that he used then?
He said, I can't go now, the children are young and slow. But you go ahead and I will, I don't know if you go ahead and I will see you later.
See you later. Later.
Seira. Asher Aval Adoni Seira. We'll meet in Seir. And Rashi says on that, when will we go there? B'mei HaMashiach, in time of the Messiah. Shenem avalu Moshiyim b'Har Tzion lishpot et Har Esav.
So where is Seir in today's world? Which place?
Somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know exactly where it is.
But I mean, is it within Israel?
No.
And is it within where apparently there's 10? I mean, there's. You only got the 7 territories.
3
So
more.
within there's 10. There's
Yes,
another 3.
yes.
So is it included
I believe
in those
so.
3?
I believe so. I'm not sure.
If the Sinai Peninsula over there where it is, the Sinai
Could be.
Peninsula.
Could be.
Wow.
All right, my friends, we'll call it over here.
Thank you very much.
We plant the seeds, we can turn things around.
Can I ask you how?
Yes.
Last week it says the full dot of Esav, and then it mentions Korah. Is that
It's
the
a different,
same
no,
Korah?
different one.
It's a different Korah. It's not a different name. It's just the same name.
Different
It says here that Judah recognized instead.